today. We're going to discuss about Microsoft Azure interviews and interview strategies. What do you need to clear these interviews? What kind of questions could be asked? What job roles could you be interviewing for? So what could be specific strategies for those? So that's what's going to be the crux of this video. So other than this, what we are going to discuss about is some general topics, some general guidelines that you may have to follow, some general things that you may have to follow in order to ace these interviews, in order to do better on these interviews. Now, not wasting any time. If you're talking about a Microsoft Azure interview, it's a technical interview. It's a technical topic, Microsoft Azure. So you will have to possess two things in order to clear interviews like these, right? One would be the knowledge of the subject, right? You need to know about Microsoft Azure, right? There's no way around it. If you do not know much about Microsoft Azure, you're going to have a pretty difficult interview. It's going to be not a pleasant conversation. Now, first thing you require is the knowledge, and the next thing that you would require is the confidence, right? You must know that the answer that you're giving is the correct answer, but I'll get to that in the later part of that video. Talking about Microsoft Azure now, what kind of roles that you could be interviewing for? You could be interviewing for a sales role where the questions or the difficulty of the interview is going to be not too much, is going to be a beginner's level Azure interview. Other than this, when you're talking about what kind of job roles you have, you could have a more technical side of the things could be there. You could be giving an interview for an admin role or a technical trainer role or a developer role, or if you're going to the third level, it could be an architect role. So the difficulty of the interviews, the range of the questions is going to be quite different. Naturally, it's going to be different. But there are certain things that you may need to pay attention to, that you may need to keep in mind, right? First is the cloud computing, right? The questions are going to be from the cloud computing, that what is cloud, what's public cloud, what's hybrid, what's private, questions like these, what's IaaS, PaaS, SaaS. So these are the basic topics, right? What is cloud in general, right? I have made a video in the past, and there are several different videos on YouTube that you can refer to, and you can actually use to make your vocabulary of cloud a little bit better, right? Moving on from the cloud, the absolute basic questions which you can expect in a sales-based interview, right, or a basic interview of Microsoft Azure. There are going to be questions from that. Second thing would be questions regarding virtual machines, right? Questions like, what's a virtual machine on the cloud? Okay, what's an availability set? If you're talking about Microsoft Azure, this is one of the favorite questions that people like to ask, right? If you are going for an intermediate level interview, what's an availability set? It's for high availability, right? If you want to increase the availability of your systems, if you want your systems to stay online, right? That kind of a question could be asked here, right? Other than this, questions like, what is fault domain? What's an update domain? If you are going for a more advanced level, if you're going for kind of a trainer profile, or if you're going for an architect profile, these are the kind of questions that you can expect. Fault domain and update domain and stuff like that. I'll link some videos here, right around here on the annotations, that you can refer to in order to brush up these particular topics like fault domains and update domains as well, right? Now, the next topic that's going to be, right, we have discussed basic cloud, VMs. Third topic is going to be the storage, right? What about the storage? There are going to be questions from the storage like, what is a blob storage? Classic, basic question, what's a blob storage, right? Other than this, what is cloud storage in general, right? High availability in storage is one of the major topics that people ask questions about, right? Another question that could be there is there a disk involved in the cloud, right? This is a yes or no question, right? Answer is obviously yes. We use virtual hard disks in the cloud as well, just the way that we use in the virtualization environments as well. So think about topics like blob storages, file shares, basic cloud storage types. That's what I'm trying to say, right? So basic databases, if you can brush up on what the concept of a database is, anything that's storing the data in a structured manner within Microsoft Azure, within a PaaS situation, is going to be an Azure database, right? And other questions like these, right? But stay basic, right? If this is the first time that you're preparing for an Azure interview or a very technical interview, you should stick to the basics in this situation and not stretch yourself too thin. Just read the basics here, right? Fourth topic is going to be networking, right? Now, this is another classic. People keep on asking the questions. People keep on asking questions about networking. There are certain basic questions that are going to cycle in every interview, regardless of what the level of interview is. It could be a sales, it could be a technical interview. The questions are going to be pretty much the same. Now, what kind of questions can we expect here? What is a VNet, right? A virtual network. It's basically a network from which you can give an IP address to all the devices, right? I'll be linking the networking videos here as well. So if you want to see all these topics that I'm talking about, if you want to understand these topics in detail or in general as well, so I'm going to link some of the videos down below and some of the resources that you can check out, and also I'll try to link the videos here in this video as well. Other than this, one question would be, what's VNet? Okay. Then would be, what is NSG? NSG is Network Security Group. It's like a firewall, right? It's like a firewall for a subnet. It's like a firewall for a network interface of the machine as well. So these are the basic questions. These are really, really important questions. You must know about what a subnet is. Subnet is a smaller network. It's a bifurcation of a network, something like that, right? It's a bifurcation of VNet. VNets can be broken down into smaller subnets, which actually have the virtual machines, which actually have the devices in them, right? So you need to know all this stuff, right? Now, not very difficult, right? But if you are getting for a basic interview, you must know this stuff. Other than this, questions about Azure AD, right? If you have worked on AD before, if you have worked on servers before this, Azure AD is going to come to you a lot naturally, right? But in general, Azure AD is a pretty simple topic. Why do we use Azure AD? It's for the identity and access management, or IAM. You create the users and you give them the access to the resources in Microsoft Azure. Because what are resources? Resources can be anything. They could be the networks, the storages, the VMs. And then you create the users and you want to give the access to the users on these resources. What tool would you use? You would use Azure AD, right? I'll link some information regarding Azure AD here as well, right? So which is really, really key in the basic interviews as well. So these are going to be the basic topics. Now, there are some other general strategies as well that you should employ in your interviews, that when you're doing these Azure or non-Azure interviews as well. That's some of the basic ones. First things first is that if you know that you said something wrong in the interview, or you misspoke, or you gave an incorrect answer earlier in the interview, feel free to correct yourself, right? Most likely the interviewer already knows if you made the mistake. They would not really correct you, right? But if you correct yourself, that kind of gives the impression that this person is actually paying attention to the interview as well and actually knows what the correct answer is. We can all make mistakes, which is so going back and correcting yourself is actually a superior thing to do, right? I would totally suggest that you should do that rather than thinking that, hey, I just got away with the mistake that I made in the interview. No, most likely you did not, and the interviewer caught it and didn't say anything. Other thing would be, do not deflect. Sometimes you just do not know the answer, right? Don't say things that you do not know that they are true, right? If you do not know the correct answer, if you have no idea what you're talking about, don't say it, right? Now, it's very natural, and learn to say, no, I don't know this, because any interviewer who's worth their salt, who has taken these interviews on Microsoft Azure, who knows Microsoft Azure in general as well, they would know that there are over 700 services. You cannot know all of them, right? So it's pretty natural to not know something, right? You can always go back and learn it, and it's actually a good thing that you can say that, hey, I do not know this, I'll have to go back and check on this stuff. But do not do this on all the questions, right? But my suggestion would be to not deflect. Another suggestion that I would say is really important is that you should know your role. You should know the role that you are interviewing for, right? As a salesperson, how much you need to know? Do you have ample sales experience or not? If you're doing it for a training role, do you have any training experience or not? As an administrator, what tools have you worked with in the past, right? So know the role that you are interviewing for, so that you can prepare accordingly for that, right? And as a continuation of that point, I would say, learn your resume. you have given a resume to the company, it does not just end there at the application point. When somebody is doing an interview for you, when somebody is interviewing you, they are most likely going to have your resume handy with them. They are going to be reading, or they might have read certain stuff that's in the resume. So it's always better to know about what certificates you have mentioned, right? Correct or wrong, that's a totally different conversation. But whatever you have mentioned in there, stay true to that, stay consistent with that information. Other than this, what skills you have added? Somebody may have added something like Python. Now, there's no way to learn Python like 10 minutes or 15 minutes before the interview, but I know you've mentioned it in your resume. It's not really correct. It could happen. It happens to all of us. Just read the overview of that at least, right? So that when the conversation may go to that point, you can always say that, hey, I used to work on that. I don't remember it. I know the gist of it, so that you don't look like a fool in the interview just because the document you mentioned, you don't know that document. So that's a dead giveaway of a person who has kind of a forged or copied resume, and you do not want to do that. So keep that in mind. It gives a super terrible impression on the interviewer. Anyway, other than this, if you have worked on any other cloud service, let's assume you have not worked on Microsoft Azure a lot, right? You have worked on AWS before, you have worked on GCP, you have worked on Office 365, you have worked on Alibaba, you have worked on anything before. Casually mention that in your interview, that yeah, I know about Microsoft Azure, but I'm more comfortable with AWS. Why? And why would that not hamper your candidature? Is that first of all, anybody who has been working on cloud is familiar that all these cloud environments are similar. If you know one product properly, you can always learn the other one, right? I'm not saying that you should have zero knowledge of Azure and totally go into the interview as I'm an AWS professional, I don't know anything about this. No, that's bad. Know the basics of Azure, but you are actually good and proficient at AWS. That's going to help you a lot with the interview, and that's going to help you a lot in learning Azure as well. If you know GCP, same thing, right? You can always mention it to the interviewer that, hey, that's your first proficiency and you are open to learning Microsoft Azure. Like I was talking about earlier, that you need to have confidence, right? You need to have knowledge of Microsoft Azure, but you need to have confidence as well, right? Nobody wants to hire a person who's not confident in the knowledge that they possess. If you know cloud computing, if you know Microsoft Azure, act like it. Don't second guess your answers. A lot of people, including myself, right? I have a habit of asking in the interview. As an interviewer, I would ask, are you sure about that? Even if the answer is correct, I would ask, are you sure about that answer? Do you think that's true? Or maybe I'll supply some wrong information as an interviewer. That don't you think that disks are not available in Microsoft Azure, just to throw you off, just to check if your concepts are as solid as you think they are or not, right? Now, nobody wants to hire a person who's not confident in their concepts, even if the concepts are correct. And how do you improve your confidence in the interviews? Give more interviews, right? You'll get rejected more. It's okay, rejection is a good thing. I know it may sound like a bit cliche that rejection is a good thing, but the idea is the more interviews that you give, the better you're going to get at giving interviews, right? Which kind of brings me to my last point. What if the interview didn't go well for you, right? You don't think that you were confident enough, you didn't give all the correct answers, the impression maybe was not great on the interviewers or interviewer, right? What to do then? Always, when you're closing the interview, ask for a feedback, right? Ask for a feedback from the person who was interviewing you, that did I do well? If I did well, or not, don't just ask did I do well, or you could always ask that anything that you would like for me to improve, any feedback from your end. What's going to happen is that there may be certain gray areas that you may not be identifying, but the person who is interviewing has, right? They may say that you don't seem confident enough. They may say that, hey, you need to learn a little bit more about the virtual machines. That gives you something to work upon for the next interviews, right? So, and another thing it does for you as well, it makes the interviewer feel heard, right? It seems like that you're asking for their opinion. That means their opinion was kind of important to you as well, which kind of gives a good impression on the interviewer too, right? So always keep that in mind. I know a lot of people nowadays are applying for new positions or different positions, and it can get a little frustrating that when you're not getting callbacks from those particular jobs that you had applied for, right? One of the best ways to get more callbacks is to make sure that your profile on these LinkedIn and Indeed are complete and there's no mistakes in your resume or something like that, right? Other than this, apply for as many positions as possible so that you can get more opportunities of doing these interviews, whether that's Azure or whether that's on a different topic, right? So other than this, if you want me to make a video on AWS or Azure related topics, you can just write them down in the comments, right? If you want to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me on Outlook or on LinkedIn. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching.